Hello, everybody. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Hey. Are we here? Are we here? All right. All right. We're going to get on this. So I was having some technical difficulties before, and I restarted the computer, and that worked. Doesn't it always? All right. And yes, I have a guest, two guests coming. I'm just going to call them on Skype now. It wasn't working. You know, they had the same damn issue. And so we're going to try the same damn trick. They're just restarting, and we're going to try it again. All right. Let me pull up some damn questions. I'm probably gonna forget I even had some questions. So I've got good news, everybody, and I will announce it. Good news, very exciting news. Could change, but I'm gonna announce it anyway. As long as everyone knows, it's you never know. Could change. And all right. That's funny. Tom Meyer says, "Looks like you just got a bong hit transplant." Guys, I can't do drugs. I can't. Yeah. I can't. I have stories about that. Not really from doing anything, but just like basically just people thinking that I'm a pothead even though I don't like pot. All right, let's see. All right, let the madness begin. Come on, guys. Let's see if this works. All right, we're calling them up. Thank you all for bearing with this as we get our... There we go. All right.
All right, you see it
I
now.
see you, but now I have to see if the audience can see. Oh, I think they can. Let's see. Hey, audience, can you see them? Can you see Will and Mike? Guys. Let's see. Shout out to everyone. Da, 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 da. Godspeed 33. I think Godspeed 33 is making fun of me saying pot instead of weed.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody says pot.
Yeah.
That's like 2 decades old, bro.
Oh, I know. No.
You need to update your lingo, bro.
Yep.
That's okay though.
Let's see.
So you must.
I was explaining how I'm just too sensitive to anything, so I don't do anything.
Oh, so you the feds.
Yeah, so it's appropriate. It's an appropriate term for me to use. Even though I would normally use weed. I mean, that is the normal term. But anyway. How about cess, guys? Have you ever heard the term cess? When was the last time you guys heard that?
About 20
Yes.
years ago.
Yeah, I know. That's when I remember it. But
Yeah.
I was probably about 4 years old. Anyway. But I remember hearing that a lot. Okay. Let's see. All right, guys, can everyone see? I'm still waiting for some response that they can see you guys when I put you guys on. Thanks for doing this, guys, and so short notice, too. Really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. I mean, we got a lot of free time now.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're all stuck at home.
I mean,
I did venture out and play a little basketball today. They said 10 people is the limit, right?
yeah.
So I just went right to the limit. So hopefully, I'm okay.
You got game?
I'm okay.
How's the game?
I'm okay. I'm not gonna pretend I'm anything special, but I got some game. honestly, I just hustle. I rebound. I'm fast and jump higher than anybody expects, but that's about it. So that's how I contribute. Just that.
Oh, so
You got a J?
Oh, see, that's
Do
the
you
problem.
miss
Sometimes it's on. It's not the best shot. I really just gotta make up for my lack of skill and just hustle. Like I'm like Rodman without the size. Like I got no real skill.
I mean, without no size. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really not saying much, is it? Is it? Because that's Rodman's whole game.
I mean, you need somebody that hustles.
That's it. That's what I do, and that's what I do. All right.
But you're like, all right, go ahead, man, go ahead.
Let's see. So I see. Okay, guys, I need confirmation that we can see Mike and Will. Just give me some confirmation. I'm using this new software because I was having trouble with this other one. That's not important though. Come on. So while I'm waiting. Lovely. Come on. So, guys. Yes, we see them. All right, we're good to go, guys. You can see and hear. Beautiful. All right. So, Mike and Will of Let the Madness Begin, thanks so much for joining me.
Well, again, thank you for having us.
And I had to repeat that so I can edit it. And I'm going to have to chop that, and I fucked myself. Now I got to chop this out too. But here we go. So, I've got some exciting announcement. I'm working on a little bit of a documentary project on co-producing it on the Bernie blackout. Okay. And it's focusing on the Bernie blackout starting from 2016 and even before up until the present. And a huge part of this story, as you guys know, and you guys have covered it yourself, is how independent media has really picked up the slack. Starting with in 2016. Now, has it been enough? Apparently not, because a lot of people still don't know what's up. But you guys, I know you guys were a part of that. I saw that. We kind of started covering Bernie about the same time. And I just want to know, take me back to then. What got you guys starting to get into politics and covering it on YouTube? Now, take me back. Give me the whole setting. So let's start with you, Will. And what's the setting? Were you in school, out of school, working, not working? What did you see going on that made you want to jump in and start commenting on this?
Well, we go back. We go back to, elementary school. So, I mean, we've had many a conversation about politics throughout our lives. We've always been, astute listeners and, just seeing things go on. And we had been having conversations about doing something. And this was well before 2016. We had those conversations. And it all just came to a point where we kind of identified that we wanted to talk about politics. We identified what, our name should be. And then we just started writing. And then after that, we started just making videos. But really, I think the goal was to, I guess the motivation was that we saw how the media was failing to cover a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to, provide a voice to that. We had saw that in, independent media, it was on the rise, no doubt. We were, listeners of TYT, going back years. And like I said, just YouTube was becoming more and more, famous for that, having voices on and expressing their views. And a lot of those views were things that you did not see on corporate media outlets. So like I said, we just felt like, we were, two kind of regular guys, not really into politics in the official sense, not having an elected office, didn't go to school for it or anything like that. We just seeing things pretty clearly. And we thought that we could communicate that.
Yeah, I'll you chime in a sec, Mike. But let me I felt the same way. Like I wasn't into politics particularly, just a video guy. But I noticed just the media was not talking about Bernie. And right. Can you guys think of any specific thing that this just made you go what's going on? why aren't they covering this, or why are they saying this? And also, when did you guys first learn about Bernie Sanders?
I learned about Bernie Sanders mostly through Will. I had heard of Bernie Sanders, and I saw a lot of his, floor speeches, right? And it was just kind of random, casual. I was like, oh man, like, yo, that dude is like he's telling the truth.
Yep.
Right.
But that's it. But I didn't really see a lot of him. So I guess he wasn't in my scope. He wasn't in my vision a lot. So I didn't really think about him a lot. Now, when it comes to me being involved in politics and me paying attention to it, I've always done that. What's different now is I feel like I have to pay more attention to it because we do a broadcast. So I'm more involved. Like in my early life, it was more casual, but I still had a knack for being conscious about social issues and politics. But I guess Bernie Sanders coming onto the scene in a more prominent way, running for president in 2016, it kind of, had me seeing things a lot clearer. I already knew things were tilted on the side of the donor class and tilted on the side of capital. I already knew that much. I already knew what kind of system we lived in. I already knew how we were institutionally unbalanced. I already knew all that. But Bernie running actually kind of allowed me to dig into that a lot more.
Yeah. Can I? Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I felt this. I feel the same way. You always know that, politicians are kind of bullshitting you just in the way they speak. And things like aren't going great economically because you're feeling it yourself. I was certainly feeling it. And for example, one job I had gotten out of college, literally I'd worked my way up to a dailies editing job. And as soon as I took the position, the person who left it and was moving up, she asked me, all right, well, how much did they give you? And they had literally just cut the salary in half. That's what happened. Around the recession, just people were losing jobs and companies were just slashing wages. Now, part of that is because, the economy was affecting them too. But another part of this, I have no doubt, they're taking advantage of the situation when people are struggling, they're going to work for less. But Mike, I agree. I had the same, felt the same way. Yeah. So I have an idea what's going on, not really following politics, but I know what's going on a little bit, at least in my world, and other people are feeling the same way. But what I didn't know is that there was a politician that was speaking the truth.
Yeah. So there's a politician that kind of speaks to your concerns. And there are other, social critics, political figures, authors, historians, whatever, that I've paid attention to all my life that's kind of given me, assisted my worldview. But as far as an actual politician and an actual someone who's serving in Congress, it wasn't there.
Yeah, there's not many of those.
It's not many of those. Yeah. And that's been kind of missing. That's been missing. Yeah. And so when you start to study Bernie Sanders and who he is and his history, you start to see wait a minute, this dude is the real deal.
Yeah. I think I think a lot of people got that awakening though in 2015, 2016, because again, he's from Vermont, a very small state. He's a United States senator, but he is a progressive. So, the attention on him is going to be very limited from the corporate media. So a lot of us didn't really see him too often. But then when he did run against Hillary Clinton and he was speaking that truth, and we know, we always, if you're somebody that, I guess deals with logic and reason, and when you hear somebody telling the truth based on that logic and reason, I mean, it's going to resonate with you. And so I think a lot of people they just gravitated towards him because other option at that time, Hillary Clinton. Of course, she had a long past. We all knew what she was about, and the challenge to that being something that was real. I mean, that woke a lot of people up.
Mm-hmm. Yep, woke me up. And how about any like specific like instances? So you mentioned floor speeches. Same thing with me. Like I saw him standing up for gay soldiers, him speaking out against the Iraq War. I mean, I was against the Iraq War, but I wasn't so involved in politics that I knew that there were politicians that were actually working, trying to stop the Iraq War. I didn't know that. I knew that Hans Blix, UN weapons inspector, didn't find weapons of mass destruction. I'm like, okay, like how could we possibly be going to war over this? How is anybody seriously doing this? But I didn't know there was like, I didn't know about these people like Bernie Sanders and because the media didn't give him any attention. So were there any specific stories in particular, any floor speeches, or any other events or speeches or issues specifically that really got you thinking about this?
I think, again, noting that, like just speaking for me, the progression to where I am today, where growing up in my 20s into my 30s, I'm definitely more involved in politics now. Of course, that's a result of what we do, but also just being, more mature and just, seeing things for what they are, having experience. But when I saw Bernie Sanders, stand up for different things, and like you said, the Iraq War,
criminal justice reform,
I can't say that at the time it resonated with me in a very profound way, because again, it might have just been the time in my life that I was at. It was, I paid attention to politics, but it wasn't, I can't say that it took over my life. I can't say that I was like deeply involved into it. I started getting very deeply involved into it when probably after 2010 came. And probably the second term of Obama, really, where I really started to, really pay attention. And like I said, 2015, when I'm seeing more of Bernie Sanders because he is running for president, I'm saying, my goodness, there is somebody that's actually, he has a long track record of actually advocating for the right things, advocating for regular people, and speaking truth to power. And this guy's actually running for president. And he's also drawing all these huge rallies. So it looks like he actually has a movement behind him. So
and nobody's seeing this on TV. That's the most frustrating thing, and that's what got me, because if people did see this, did hear him speak, then they could, instead of just reading occasionally the little coverage he ever got or hearing the little coverage he ever got, which is just totally negative most of the time. If they actually heard the man speak, then their impression would completely change. And so that was part of what I wanted to do. Like I started trying to, nobody would listen to like any of these floor speeches. I'd be like, hey, can I put on this floor speech? You're gonna love it.
Yeah.
They're like, my brother's like, fuck you. Like, put back, watching basketball, man. Fuck you. And so I tried. I have some background in editing, so I was like, all right, my mission was to create like trailer type stuff that just was so compelling that you're like, so that people would give him a chance, actually listen to a full speech, after watching it. Ideally, that's the mission. And so anyway, okay, let's see what. Oh, okay. So everybody, Mike and Will, you guys are in South Carolina, correct?
Yeah,
that is right.
Yes.
So what the hell? So tell us what's going on in South Carolina. So obviously, it seems to me, and you guys think Bernie Sanders is the best option for president. Sure seems to me. So why is it South Carolina voted so much for Joe Biden? What's going on, guys?
Many reasons.
There's a lot of reasons. I think that's a complex issue. Mm-hmm. South Carolina has a lot of black Democratic voters.
Mm-hmm. About 60%.
About 60%
Democratic output.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with media. Number one, like you mentioned before, like why isn't Bernie Sanders getting more attention? You know, like why isn't his campaign picking up the steam that it should? Well, if Bernie Sanders had, you know, a media that covered him 24/7 and covered him honestly, then I'm pretty sure he would have more support. And if you look at the demographics of who watches network television, who watches cable television like MSNBC and CNN, it's mostly older people. There's a huge gap between older people and young people if you're talking about what kind of media they pay attention to. And if you look at most of the voter base, especially Joe Biden's, it's older. So they pay attention to corporate media. That's what they watch. Younger people don't. This is why Bernie Sanders excels with that demographic. So you have two hurdles that it's hard to get over for Bernie Sanders. You have the media hurdle. He doesn't have the exposure. And then you have people who are just comfortable with whoever has a D beside their name.
Right.
We talked about this, I think it was yesterday when we were going over some video from the debate on Sunday. What did he say? What did Biden say? Something like,
oh, yeah. Biden said at the debate that something like he was a strong Democrat with a capital D.
With a capital D. So
and we thought, you know, that of course that doesn't mean anything whatsoever because it's not like Democrat means one thing and that's just one set of ideas. There's a lot of conservative Democrats. There are centrist Democrats. You know, I mean, there's a lot in between. There's leftist Democrats. Of course. So Biden saying that he's a strong Democrat with a capital D, and I've stated it many times before, I have wanted Bernie Sanders to come back with this nonsense that Joe Biden is peddling about him being a Democrat, strong Democrat, and Obama Democrat, all this.
He fucked the shit out of a rock with that capital D.
He did, but also what he did in 2018 was that he campaigned for a far-right Republican and trying to get him reelected in Michigan, Fred Upton. So if you are this progressive and strong Democrat with a capital D, how could you go to Michigan, take $200,000 for your appearance and try to get a Republican reelected when all the Democratic Party wanted to do was initiate this blue wave to retake the House?
And the media is pretty much ignoring things like that and Biden's other flaws. So you have a lot of the voter base that's ignorant about Joe Biden because the media is not covering it. And if you have a voting base that is just accustomed to voting for the Democrat, they will just trust any Democrat. They'll just trust a politician that has a D beside their name because they associate their party, they associate the Democrats with not just getting things done, but addressing their major concerns. And if you look at the exit polling is ridiculous. If you're looking at issue by issue, when they judge either Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, the issues that they think Joe Biden is better on are the issues that like he hasn't ever been for, or he's at, you know what I'm saying? It's weird. Like they asked the question, who do you see going about maintaining your Social Security? Like out of Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, which of these two candidates do you see protecting your Social Security? The overwhelming majority of people said Joe Biden, even though we have a well-documented history of Joe Biden advocating for cutting Social Security. The same thing about Medicare.
And a well-documented history of Bernie fighting to protect it.
Exactly. And same question with Medicare for all. They said, which candidate could best get that done? Who can get us to Medicare for all? It was overwhelmingly Joe Biden. I was like,
how could that be possible?
Yeah.
How could that be possible?
Just recently he said, or he suggested that he would veto it if it came to his office.
So we have a lot of uninformed voters who just assume because, hey, they have these concerns. So, and I vote Democrat, and Biden is the most recently visible Democrat associated with Obama. So I just trust them, and I just trust them because they're a Democrat, and I vote Democrat. So I'm just going to assume that those concerns are being addressed by that politician. And these people just, I think people have similar concerns, like whether they call themselves progressive or liberal or moderate voters now. I think people have the same concerns. I think the problem is, like, people are not like connecting those concerns to the particular politician they idolize. They just idolize the politician and they think that that particular politician is going to take care of those concerns. So they just follow him blindly. And I think people just don't make the connection. So they hate corruption, they hate greed, they hate money in politics, they hate all that stuff.
They say they do.
They say they hate inequality.
Yeah, Biden says, he's against like money in politics and all this stuff. I mean, it's it's not true. It's so frustrating. Do you guys have any specific?
I don't think they make the connection.
Yeah, they don't make the connection. I agree. Misinformation.
I don't think people make the connection between hating those things and then the politicians that they idolize or follow. They hate those things, but yet they'll still vote for somebody that is the antithesis to those things. Yeah.
Now, are you guys like outliers in your community, or do you guys have do you find yourselves I don't know, like if you're in a bigger city or if you're super rural, but when you're speaking with other people, do you bring up politics, and what do people say that you have trouble like getting through to them on, or have you been able to convince anybody on anything? If so, how?
South Carolina, of course, is very conservative. Of course, there is a Democratic contingent here. This state always goes red. We know that in the presidential elections. When you talk to people, I mean, it depends where you're at. Maybe it depends who you're talking to. There's a wide range of beliefs here. Most of it is conservative and no more than moderate. There are some leftists here. I mean, we've definitely had our dealings with some progressive people here in South Carolina, in the upstate, in the mid. We're in Columbia, South Carolina, so that is the capital of South Carolina. So yeah, you would probably find more of those people in your bigger cities. But it's just what I get is that people have this they have a really big distrust of the federal government. Now, I don't believe it's real. I don't believe it's real because they will trust them to do certain things, but certain things that are always demonized, like healthcare. Like you don't want the government to take over healthcare because what have they always gotten right? I mean, what have they gotten right? You wouldn't want them to mess that up. And I not always say, but I've come to this realization that, I mean, if that's your opinion, that you don't want the government to take over certain things because you're scared they might mess it up, why would you be protective of Medicare? Most people don't want to see Medicare messed with. They want to see more funding go towards Medicare. They want to see it solvent. They don't want it to go anywhere. It's a very popular program. So if you're okay with the federal government administering Medicare, then why would you be scared of the federal government having to do something with Medicare for all? With Medicare, it only impacts a certain segment of our society. What we want is that we want it to be extended to everybody in the country. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that if you don't have this deep-seated hatred for what Medicare is. It just doesn't make sense. But you see that a lot with people, and I don't think it's just people here in South Carolina, it's people everywhere. And it's mostly because the media, demagogues that are on TV, and they keep pummeling this information through these airwaves, and people are just soaking it in, and that's just the reality. Well, that's their reality.
And you see moderate liberals all the time talking about conservatives and how they vote against their interest. We see this all the time from moderate liberals, whether it be like white or non-white. They always kind of focus on conservatives. Why are they voting against their own interest? But the conversation about Democrats, that we can't have that conversation. Democrats, the Democratic voting base, oh, no, they don't do the same thing. They don't vote against their interests. So when you bring up, especially like black people in the South, and them voting for somebody like Joe Biden, there's a lot of media figures, a lot of moderate liberals who get offended if you bring up like, hey, black Democrats are voting against their own interests too. If we're just focusing on a particular demographic, we can say the same thing about all Democratic voters, but since you brought up South Carolina and the distribution of voters and 60% of being black, I think that's a legitimate conversation to have. And we got a lot of pushback because we wanted to kind of broach that topic. Because if it's okay to broach with conservatives or Republicans, especially black conservatives or Republicans, and moderate liberals love to, scream from the mountaintops about them voting against their own interests, then why are black Democratic voters, why are they off limits? Why can't we broach that topic? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and with all, like, personally, I can respect people's, like you said, they're fearful of the government having too much control. They don't trust the government. But see, with Bernie Sanders, I think there's an argument that can be made. It's like, well, sure, you can't just trust any institution no matter what, but what makes an institution trustworthy or not? Well, if it goes to war after it lied to every single American, about having weapons, about Iraq being a threat to us, having weapons of mass destruction, well, yeah, you can't trust the government for that shit. So, and yet you're going to vote for the person that did that? Not just this time, but last time? Like, these are the people that you're going to keep voting for? The people who lied to you about one of the biggest issues in modern history and most disastrous, that led to the most disastrous results, hundreds of thousands of people dying, the creation of ISIS? Come on.
So what is so like, how do you reflect upon that? What do you think about that? So you see a lot of these politicians still getting reelected, even though they're on the wrong side of history, even though they've been shown to be bought off by corporations. So is it just people are uninformed, or they really just don't care?
It sure seems like they're, it's a scary proposition. Maybe some people just don't care. They're not really paying attention. But I think the not being informed is a huge part, because just the fact, like, hey, if the concern is giving the government too much power or being afraid of the government, that's a fair, position to have, but it doesn't, but you're being totally hypocritical. Like, it just doesn't make sense for you to then vote for Joe Biden, like I said. And not only that, but Bernie Sanders, I mean, he is trustworthy. He has proven himself to be trustworthy. And while the media has spun him as some radical that can't get anything done, that won't work with, regular people or Republicans or moderate Democrats, that's absurd. I've looked through his history. I've documented history. He has a great history of working with Republicans and moderate Democrats. He has a great history of that. Like in the the provision he wrote in the Affordable Care Act that got 9 million more Americans access to health care.
Right.
Part of that, and also in the big veterans bill that got veterans more benefits. Part of that was he allowed veterans to go outside. In that bill was legislation that allowed veterans to go outside the VA to private institutions, private healthcare. Okay, that's not government control. That's Bernie Sanders at the end of the day going, yeah, I'll give you. Now, that wasn't in his original thing, but he's like, you know what? Sure. The goal at the end of the day is to get people more healthcare. So, yeah, let's put that in the provision. I will put that in the provision. Let's do it in order to get the votes from the Republicans. I mean, he's actually, the crazy thing, it's so frustrating because part of this misinformation is the whole that he's radical and can never get anything done, but he's actually incredibly practical. He's practical, and he is willing to work with, people of different ideologies.
Like you said, he is framed as being like doing the most. He is the most leftist politician we have ever seen, not just in modern history, but ever. His ideas are so pie in the sky and rainbows and kittens, ponies, unicorns, all of this stuff. It can't get done. I think anybody that is actually paying attention, and actually for people that aren't paying that much of attention, if you ask anybody about corruption within our political system, if you ask them about money in politics, usually they will have some type of opinion on that, saying that, we have to do something about it. Okay, fine. So if we have to do something about politics, if money corrupts, and I always like to say, that going back to 2016, even Hillary Clinton would talk about money in politics and how it corrupts people and this and that. And I always want the follow-up question. I always want somebody, a reporter, please, somebody to ask, okay, so if money corrupts, who is it corrupting? That follow-up question is never, ever addressed. So if there is a problem with our political system and the money that's pumped into it and that it is funneled into these candidates, like Bernie Sanders has said before, these CEOs of these businesses, these operators of hedge funds and everybody, the 1%, they're not just giving this money for no reason whatsoever. They do expect a return on investment. So again, if we're being honest, we have to say that it is impacting certain decisions that our politicians are making. So we have to address it. But the only way we can address it is through our vote. And we have to use that vote to not vote for these same politicians that seem to not realize that they're being they realize that they're being impacted, but they're not being honest. Mm-hmm. So it just goes to, I guess what people are believing, if they care or not, like you were saying. Do they care? Do they not care? Are they paying enough attention? I know here
if they were
today
paying
in 2020,
attention, they would care. I think the misinformation is directly related to the not caring. I think.
A lot of people don't have time. I said it just quickly. A lot of people, in 2020, we've talked about the wealth and income inequality gap widening throughout the years. A lot more people are working longer hours. They have, maybe they have a couple of different jobs. They have kids. They have different things to do. So we know a lot of people don't have the time necessary to delve into information, maybe like we do, maybe like you do as well, maybe like a lot of your audience does. So they're just getting blasted with headlines. And we know that cable news is something that is impactful. They get these headlines on their phones, their tablets, their watches, whatever. And what they see, that might be just a little bit of information. And, that's all that they need to make help them make a decision. And it's often the wrong one. They don't get the full story.
And they also have the impression, sorry, you go ahead, Mike, after, but they also have the false impression that these big mainstream news outlets are objective. They're not objective.
Right.
They're so obvious they're not objective.
Right.
And I'm not saying independent media is more objective. I think it's a human issue. It's humans can't really be 100% objective. It's very difficult. But some are better at it than others. But the mainstream media is not objective, and the fact that there's this belief that they are is another big part, a big reason that so many people are misinformed and have the wrong idea about candidates and issues.
I do think that's part of it. Early on, there was an issue that I guess Will and I were a little bit conflicted on between us. Mm-hmm. And we were, trying to figure out why Americans en masse don't really vote according to their actual interests. What is wrong with the base of voters to where they keep voting in politicians that are not taking care of their needs, that are not addressing these concerns. And I do think part of it is the media, people who are uninformed, people don't have time, people trust the mainstream media and think that the mainstream media is objective, like you said. But I think the other major issue is I think there's a lot of people, whether they call themselves liberal, conservative, Democrat, or Republican, I do think that the America being a powerful country and being in power is very appealing to them. Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing that we have to accept. That and the other topic kind of speaks to this. When Will was talking about how people are okay with the Medicare system.
Right.
But then if it's expanded, they're like, oh, no, we can't do that. Mm-hmm. But these same people trust our military, don't they?
Yeah.
Doesn't that's the hypocrisy that you talked about, but in regard to politicians, though, because politicians always say what? Well, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for that? But then when it comes to the military, the budget keeps going up and up and up. I think that's a symbiotic hypocrisy because I see that within a lot of American people. People say, well, I don't trust the government. I don't trust the government to do this and that. oh, military, yeah, patriotism, like America's number one. You see that from both liberals and conservatives, just differently. So there's that symbiotic hypocrisy that exists between our politicians and the citizens that say government can't do anything for these particular things that actually are good for people, but then champion the military and say, oh, the military's fine.
Yeah.
So I do think like that plays into people's need to feel powerful, and living in a country that has disempowered so many people become like kind of drawn into that America as a powerful nation. And I do think that people like that. I think that's part of the problem. There are people who like this country as a hegemonic state, and that is unfortunate. They like feeling powerful through the apparatus of America being the mighty and the powerful. I mean, that's just an unfortunate truth. People, regular people, everyday people like the fact that America is powerful. So, but they don't understand how America going about its politics the way that it does globally and domestically is actually hurting their lives and hurting their chances of living in an equitable nation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think the citizens, like, I don't think that's coming so much from citizens directly. Now, I agree, having, pride in one's country and wanting to have a strong, powerful country, sure, that is like coming from the citizens as well. I mean, that's like a natural thing, I think. But the whole discussion of like, not questioning the military budget, but questioning, expanding healthcare, that's a direct result of the narrative that the media pushes. Because the media, they write endlessly. Like those last several years, they've written endlessly about why, giving reasons why Medicare for all shouldn't work, couldn't work, can't have it, can't possibly afford it, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, in how many articles though are there being critical of, our interventionism?
Yeah.
The media. Yeah. The media. Look, I mean, I think we said this on the show last night that the media is a significant problem because, look, we know how media has changed over the years, but I can't say that people have changed. I can't say that critical thinking skills have changed from 30 years ago until now to where people have an ability to do it more, to have more logic and reasoning skills right now. I don't think that's the case. I think, just to take somebody like Joe Biden, in 1988, he ran for president, didn't get anywhere, and he was essentially disqualified by the media because they were actually willing to tell the truth about them. So there were many lies that he was telling. The media actually reported on it. There were many times the media commentators said, no, I think he's dead in the water. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. Now, fast forward 30 plus years later, he's told more lies, yet the media has changed and are not communicating those lies to any degree really whatsoever. Yeah. And he's a better candidate with those lies. So again, I don't think this is anything about people and their ability to process information. I just think for the most part, people need to be led to the truth. They need to be led to that reasoning, to that truth, to those facts, because they're not going to do their due diligence to actually go seeking it. So if the media isn't giving it to them, then we get what we get. We get Joe Biden as a phenomenal candidate.
I think that's a great point. I try to be, I edge on being a little more optimistic because obviously when you view the media, you view it critically with a critical eye, right? And do you think, is that just natural, Will? Or, did you pick this up anywhere? I would like the backstory, if you guys have any anecdotes or stories about this where you kind of had some realization about this. But, I really feel like, again, maybe I'm just being positive, but I feel if people are, obviously the media has a huge responsibility, but it's also, people have a responsibility. And I think perhaps if we educate people, whether it's changing our education system, whether it's people online like you and others, just giving people a new perspective, an alternative view, more honest and attempting to give a more objective view, informing people what the media leaves out, maybe that will lead to a more media literate society. So I think media literacy is I think that's kind of the big thing. And I think that really can improve. There is a lot of room for improvement there.
I think it's definitely possible. I will say that you're catching me at a bad time. Okay. Because if you caught me in 2015, 2016, I might be a little bit more optimistic. Not saying that it has completely gone away. I'm just saying that by going through these certain experiences and seeing what has unfolded, not my objectivity, but just my optimism has declined somewhat because this power apparatus that we're living in, I mean, it is well built. It is a well functioning machine. It really doesn't need any operation, any like hands-on approach because people do the work for the big players. So, it's something that needs to be defeated. How we do that is the question. I'm not sure how we do it. Like you were talking about, we do have to reform the media, and that is incumbent on people like us and other people that have voices in independent media to bring new listeners in. We're just, I guess, we're operating behind the eight ball. The work is cut out for us, so we have a long way to go before we're able to actually get to a place where the majority of citizens have their ears and their eyes on other media sources.
Well, I think that's the key right there, because I don't think there's reforming this media. Like, the media does what it's supposed to do. It does its job. They are like the press secretary for the oligarchs.
Right.
That's what they're there to do. And I don't think there's any reforming that. What's that old phrase? The revolution will not be televised. Mm-hmm. Most people know that phrase. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? So we can't expect to go to MSNBC, CNN, or any of these major news networks to actually get a breakdown of like what needs to be done to change this world into one that's better for most people and change the world too. So it's not going to happen through that. And I do think that when we talk about reforming the media, I think that speaks to creating our own media, which is going on right now. And if you see where independent media is going, it's on the rise. Now, getting people tuned into that, I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing we can do about major news media. There's nothing we can do about that. And I know that major news media, they see people moving towards independent media. That's why they're cracking down on YouTube. Yeah. That's why they crack down on profit sharing as far as YouTube channels, as far as ads. That's why they themselves are going to streaming and going to YouTube. No. That's why they're trying to become less button up and do like live streams and do things that make people feel like they're normal people, because they see the shift too. Yeah. So they're trying to get ahead of the curve.
And it is a real shift, though. And is that not, reason to be positive? I mean, there is a very real shift, dramatic shift. I mean, the fact Sanders supporters, they're all younger. That's because they're watching independent channels. So, I mean, doesn't that mean the trend is looking good?
It's not all gloom and doom. Yeah, like I said, my optimism isn't completely gone. It's just that, we know the fight that we're in for. And I mean, it's long. It looks arduous. It looks like it's going to be a very long process to get to a point where we can actually educate citizens about what is really going on. Because right now, what I feel like I'm being told is that the truth doesn't matter. The facts don't matter. Yeah. Because if Joe Biden in 2020 can come off as a great candidate, if he can lie to black people about getting arrested, going to see trying to see Nelson Mandela, if he can lie time and time again over the years about participating in sit-ins and marches and protests, all the while he was actually working with segregationists to oppose integration. If that can be real, and him show up on the Edmund Pettus Bridge with black people to commemorate Bloody Sunday, if all of this is real and people not completely oust this guy and disqualify him, and they instead say, yeah, he's our candidate, he's our guy, Uncle Joe, we believe in him. If that happens, then right now we're living in a reality where the facts are not the priority. The truth is not the priority, and we definitely have to do something about that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, people are misinformed. Like I'm speaking to people, they don't even know that Bernie Sanders was arrested protesting segregation. Like, that should be a news story. That's an incredible news story. And just the fact that that there's literally no segments just covering that. That's an incredible goddamn story. So, and that just shows, like, it's not just about the entertainment factor. Yeah, that's a big part of news production is you got to do stuff that's entertaining that gets eyeballs.
Right.
But this is entertaining. This is an incredible story, and they still don't cover it. Like, this is a perfect example of that the media is, like, in the tank for the establishment and out and against Bernie Sanders. Now, bringing Bernie's protest and segregation, this is a little bit of an aside, but I do remember you made, well, first, did you guys ever see my Now is the Time video?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah.
So I remember seeing, I think the first time I saw that Killer Mike speech
Okay.
was in one of your guys' video.
Right. Yeah.
What did you guys call that video? Do you remember?
I can't remember. We uploaded it to Facebook. And
yes.
it completely just blew up. Yeah. Back in 2016.
And I just think, so I want to thank you guys for that. And because that obviously inspired my Now is the Time video. And it just shows how independent media is so crucial. You guys, so the Sanders campaign, they were sleeping. They weren't uploading full speeches and full events like they do now. Thankfully,
right.
that's progress. But so people wouldn't have even seen that speech if it wasn't for independent channels, in this case yours, that shared it, right? I mean, and then that creates, like, it gets around this, like, I pick it up, I turn something, expand on it. Other people share it around, like, anyway. So
it's hard to break a habit, man. It's hard to break a habit. So you kind of have to, it has to click. And I think, like, for a lot of people, something clicked, and sometimes it's a slow click. It's not like immediate. Sometimes it just, like, happens slowly. It's like little clicks, like, lead to the big one. And I think when it comes to people transitioning to media that is actually substantive and actually worth something and valuable, I think there has to be these little, like, clicks. There has to be something inside of them that's like, wait a second.
That speaks to me.
That speaks to me. They're talking. There has to be a contrast, because if you live a certain way and you think that's the only way to live, that's the only thing you're gonna know. That's the only thing you're gonna be comfortable with. If you see some other alternative, and there's just a deep contrast, it would speak to you. There's going to be that click. You're like, wait a second, like, what's going on here? So there has to be, like, a consistent, like, amount of contrast, like, available to people. There has to be a consistent, like the video you reference. That has to happen consistently. People have to view things like that consistently to even begin some sort of transition. So it has to be, they have to break the habit somehow. And
you need something that they see, they have an experience that wakes them up, that really just, makes them question things, that changes their reality, that really challenges their reality. It's like, oh, I thought Hillary Clinton was, a great, advocate for, black people, a great champion of civil rights. And that Bernie Sanders was just some other guy, something like that really just opens people's eyes. Where was I going to go with this? You continue. I cut you off. Continue if you had.
No, man, I was pretty much done with my point. Like, that was, kind of what I wanted to.
Well, I can say that, I mean, like you were saying, Matt, the good news is that independent media is on the rise. So, these viral videos that get out there and people are able to see the truth about different figures, whether it be negative or whether it be positive. All of this, more people are on the rise. More people are jumping on social media than people jumping off, and that's going to continue. I think for the next, I don't know, but into the next few years at least. I don't see it slowing down. So people are going to get their information from social media on a more regular basis as we move on to the future.
All right. Well, now that you're getting positive, I guess I'll go negative. So here's the thing. So what depresses me, what concerns me, You see, everything he says is good,
Right.
sounds positive. But here's the thing. Bernie Sanders, what made him so incredible and the potential, had such potential to be a game changer, is because he has this long documented history.
Right.
You know? I'm really worried we'd have to wait another 40, 30 years to have that again. He had this incredibly long history. Anybody, if they saw it, they can see that he's honest, trustworthy, sincere, and an incredible track record of defending, civil rights, women's rights, workers' rights in general. Just an incredible representative of the people, working for ordinary people. So it is depressing that exists. Like, just the chance of that, having that incredible archive over 30 years, like, that's just so rare. Like, that's never happened in history. Like, it started, I don't think it has, to have that much video archive, partly because video wasn't really being recorded for longer before then. Truly, like, that was kind of when video even started. Anyway, so that's my concern, is obviously that's what should have made this so easy. I don't know if it's the campaign stumbled on this or something, but obviously there's a huge challenge because of the mainstream media and everything, but still, to have all that and still not be able to get through to people, have all that archival footage, all this proof, all this truth, to be able to show people, to prove to them the case for Bernie Sanders, and still didn't have any luck with that. Like, how are we going to have any better help in the future when you don't have this incredible, documented 30 years of proof that this guy is on everyone's side?
Generational. Yeah. I think it's generational. I think it might be generational.
Yeah, I mean, he's right that it's unlikely that you're going to have a candidate with that long a track record actually standing up for people, doing the right thing, speaking truth to power. It's unlikely.
I hope we do. I just worry it's going to be another 30 years.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But here's the reality. How much did it affect the decision? I mean, the reality is that if all of that mattered, if that track record actually mattered to people, to where you have to look into a person's past and see what they were about then and look at them where they are now, and that's going to inform you on your decision making. If that was real, then we would be sitting at a different place right now in the 2020 Democratic
because
primary.
nobody thought, because for whatever reason, I partly blame the campaign for not getting everybody's eyeballs to see this stuff. The mainstream media is a huge obstacle too. They didn't show this to people. So people really didn't see this. If they saw it, it would make a difference. I have no doubt. Anyway, go.
If they saw it and the mainstream media covered it appropriately, I think the two have to go hand in hand. Because we, of course, have shared videos on social media before, and we have gotten absolutely ridiculous responses, not just with us, but when we see the truth out there on social media, and then you see comments like, well, if it's a negative post on Joe Biden, and then somebody might remark, well, this just makes me want to vote for him even more. Stuff like that. It's like, okay, hold on. Yeah. What are you actually paying attention to? So I don't think it is right now. Right now, I don't think it really is, again, about the facts, about history, about integrity, about truth. I just don't think it's that's the priority. I always wanted to believe that politics was about choosing the best person for the job, the person that is actually advocating for people, that is going to be a true representative of people, not somebody that just wants to get in there, spend years and years in Washington, D.C., collecting a paycheck, shaking hands with lobbyists. And like I said, not actually representing us. It's more about the ideas, the vision, the integrity, your track record. But right now, what I noticed, and what I've noticed for a while, is that a lot of politics has to do with popularity, about celebrity status. Sure. It's not about the idea. So that's the thing that we have to turn around. We have to get to a place where people are actually paying attention to a person based on what they are. Like Bernie Sanders is somebody that I appreciate, and I love him for actually trying to fight this fight for many, many years and running for president these last two election cycles. I mean, I love him for standing up for what is right and standing up for people. But it was never about Bernie Sanders. This mission started long before Bernie Sanders ever tried to run for president. People have wanted real change in this country for so long. We just want somebody that can facilitate that change. And, like I said, is it going to be somebody with his long track record? Probably not. But it can be somebody that upholds the same type of character and integrity. And as long as they're doing that and fighting the good fight, I think we have a chance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It might be like I said, the fight is long. The fight is going to be hard. It's going to be fierce. But we do have to have that fighter, somebody that's willing to stand up for us.
I mean, I'll also say all good points. The whole point about, people didn't, they're not aware of, his integrity and his past, and his character. And part of that is, they just weren't exposed to his real history. And instead, they were exposed to the Bernie Bro narrative. So that's that. So, which is insane, what are your guys' thoughts on the whole Bernie Bro narrative?
I think the Bernie Bro narrative is just a part of, let's say, I don't know what to call it. It's just a part of that whole cabal of excuses people want to make for being anti-Bernie. It's just one part. The first part is probably something you've constantly heard, and that's he's a Russian asset. So the Bernie Bro just kind of goes along with that, or like he's mean, or he's not nice, or he shakes his fist, or he's sexist. So it's like all of these just are just like excuses people make because they wanted to be anti-Bernie. And I think the media did propel a lot of that, but I think it's just people trying to massage their conscience for not supporting Bernie. I do think there's a lot of people who are anti-Bernie, whether they're Biden supporters, Warren supporters, Kamala Harris supporters. I think a lot of them are consciously conflicted between supporting the politician they idolize, the celebrity status, and then not supporting the actual politician that is actually going to address those concerns. So that creates a cognitive dissonance. So they have to create these little excuses for themselves to not vote for Bernie Sanders. So you create things like, I can't support Bernie Sanders, who actually is standing up for the working class, working people, and stands up for everything that I care about. But I can't vote for him because some of his supporters are rude to me online. like just hearing that, just hearing that,
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Like there's no person with common sense that would be like, that's a good point.
Well, see, they're not operating with common sense.
They're not operating with common sense. They're operating with something else, or like how frivolous the accusation is about him being a Russian asset. And I've interacted with some of these people that make this accusation online. I've actually tried to have a conversation, but they can't answer none of my questions. You know why? Because it's a fantasy. It's completely fabricated. It's up here because they're trying to create an excuse as to why they're not voting for the actual candidate that addresses all of their concerns. So it's a bit of cognitive dissonance there. So
and you can't fight that battle up there.
You can't.
You can't get into here and fight that battle because they can always find a way out of your logic and your reasoning. I posed the question to somebody.
You can fight it, Will, but it's not an easy battle. It takes time.
No, it's almost undefeated.
Because imagine if all the media they watch all of a sudden reported the fact that a Harvard graduate student just did a study with 50 million tweets, and proved that 1% to 2% of the Bernie supporters are, rude, very rude in this manner that they, this Bernie Bro, this mean manner.
Right.
But he also found that that's the same percentage for the fans of every other candidate.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, right? If you go online, most likely you're not going to get into squabbles with people on your side.
Probably not.
Probably not. No. I'm even if there is disagreements, it's usually we're we're on the same page. We're already on the same page. We just like the details are just a little bit different.
Right.
So we're not getting into squabbles with people on our side. We're going to get into squabbles with people who are on another side, whether it be a Kamala Harris supporter, or whether it be Elizabeth Warren supporter, or a Biden supporter. So if I just say, man, how valuable is this? Bernie Sanders supporters are the nicest, but I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. So that's not even valuable. That's not valuable.
No.
Like all of my negative interactions are most likely going to be with the supporters of other candidates. But if I say that means like our side is the nicest, that would be ridiculous. So
most of the people that are complaining too, I don't hear any kind of estimate given more than like I've spoken to hundreds that are mean to me, or hundreds of Bernie bros on Twitter. Okay, so I like to, just like up that ante just a little bit. Let's say like 10,000 of them are just.
You be fair.
Yeah, just do a little bit more. 10,000 Bernie bros are out there. They're vicious. They're mean. They say the worst things to you ever, right? And so you look at, I'll take a look at Bernie Sanders, his actual followers on Twitter. And I believe it's over 9 million. Just to be fair, I say, okay, let's just say half of them. Let's just say half of them are actually Bernie Sanders supporters, because you can follow people that you don't agree with. So half of them are Bernie Sanders supporters, and they actually support his mission, his vision, all that. So I go to 4 million. All right, so 4 million are good, and they don't behave in this kind of treacherous behavior and the vile language and comments that are threatening or anything like this. But the 10,000 stand out to people. Like the 10,000 speak more to you than like the 4 million on Twitter, and then even more that are not on social media. There's millions of people, more people in general that do not actually engage in social media at all. There are more people that live off of social media than on. So there are millions of people that we are talking about that don't engage in this kind of dastardly type of behavior. But it's like they don't get any credit whatsoever. It's these very few that speak for the whole movement. It doesn't make any sense.
It's wrong. It's wrong to judge a group of people based on the actions of a few. That's bigotry.
That's why it's not logical.
That's bigotry.
I'm glad you mentioned it that way, because that's exactly what it is. And I called out. You ever heard of that anti-racist educator dude named Tim Wise? Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard of him. Yeah, I have heard of him.
Yeah, so I had to get at him a little bit for that, because he's an anti-racist educator, right? And he's always shit posting about Bernie bros. That's all he shit posts about. And he always has something to say about Bernie supporters. I hope the bros do this, and I hope the bros. So I said, look, I was like, you're an anti-racist educator, but like you are stereotyping a whole group of people. Like you are saying this particular group of supporters have different traits than these other groups. So what are you encouraging there? You're encouraging people to treat that group differently. You're saying that this particular group of people operates upon, I guess, a different mindset. They have different traits that makes them more toxic, more rude online. So guess what's going to happen? You're encouraging more attacks on that group of people. And you're justifying how that group is treated. So it's just like a circular logic here.
And this is an anti-racist education.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, how do you not get that concept, dude?
Yeah, no, that's incredible. That's incredible, horrifying example of people who are supposedly against prejudice,
right?
Against prejudice, and yet they're being completely prejudiced while supposedly being anti-prejudice.
They can rationalize it. That's why I say that up here is undefeated, and not to say that minds can't change, people can't evolve, but I'm saying the dealings that we have with these people are limited. We only have, it's just a snapshot of their life. We only have so much time to actually try to convince them that, no, this is actually the truth. I'm trying to inform you. I'm trying to, and, not do it in a very, like a combative way or like be offensive or anything like that. But in that short amount of time, you can't just change minds. It just does not happen. Like what you're saying with the media, if we're able to, I guess, put real media, put actual informed media in front of people's eyes, the truth in front of people's eyes, it's still going to be a very long process for somebody to say, oh, okay, well, this kind of challenges my preconceived beliefs. So, man, hold on, man. It's going to take them a long time to keep watching and actually come to a conclusion that, man, I was actually believing some bullshit. Ooh, it's not going to happen instantly.
Well,
it's just not.
I think that's a personal choice too. I don't think anybody could do that for them. It's like I can't force feed somebody food to help them change their life. I can't force feed somebody food to help them, have a healthier body. So they have to make that decision. And since we're talking about, independent media on social media, I do think that's why somebody like David Brock was hired by Hillary Clinton. That is one of the strategies being used so people's attention is diverted. I'm pretty sure you covered it too, the whole correct the record thing. The whole correct the record thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so, I have no doubt that I was a victim of that, actually.
Hell yeah, dude. No, you straight up felt the force of that shit. No, for real. And I do think that's where a lot of the whole Bernie bro stuff is coming from. The whole he's just like Trump. You see a lot of that, especially from the resistance. Bernie Sanders supporters are just like Trump supporters. We're MAGA-like. We're a cult. Yeah. Bernie bros. We're talking. I'm pretty sure that's a social engineering experiment or a social engineering operation that's going on, because it's too widespread. And I'm not saying people are not organized enough to start something that on their own, but it's just too organized and too coordinated.
Well, and it's easy. It's easy to coordinate. I mean, look at the email leaks. We know. I mean, we didn't need that to know, but it proves how close the Hillary Clinton campaign was with the media. It's a fact that political campaigns, they cozy up with the media. The media is happy to cozy up with political campaigns simply because, it's just classic access journalism. It's just a human thing. You're going to want to be tight with the people with power. You want to be tight with the people who give you access, so you can have a story on them, so you can interview them. These big, celebrities. They're celebrities in that sense. Yeah. And that's how this happens. The Hillary Clinton campaign, they started it with the Obama. In 2008, there was an article that was about the Obama boys.
Yeah. Do you know there's an article about Obama being a so-called Russian asset. There was an article about Jimmy Carter being a Russian asset. Wow. There's also articles you can go back and see that JFK was accused of the same thing.
Yeah.
So
these are recycled.
These are actually recycled narratives.
Just ad hominem attacks.
They're recycled narratives that are interjected into our current political discussions, and people don't know that the same kind of circumstances, fabricated circumstances, existed 4 years ago. It's just a 24/7 news cycle. It's constantly winding up every day, so people forget. Everything that was present during the 2016 primary with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders existed in 2008. Almost everything. Yep. The Bernie bros, and like you said, it was just Obama boys. Actually, party unity was an issue too. Mm-hmm. That didn't just come up because Bernie Sanders ran for president and he's dividing the party. That was actually an issue in 2008. You can go look up the Associated Press and how they covered it. It was in the Democratic Party was like, oh no, Obama is fucking Hillary up. What are we gonna do?
The difference that we saw, see, in 2016, and I have some personal experience with this because, I actually spoke to some family members that came away with the impression that in 2016 it was too bitter of a contest, and one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton lost is because she was damaged as a candidate, resulting from that 2016 Democratic primary. So that's something that people actually believe, and I had to say, well, hold on. Do you remember 2008? Do you remember the contest between Obama and Hillary Clinton? Do you remember how bitter that was? And nobody said, the eventual nominee is going to get too bloodied and damaged to take on the Republican nominee.
He won in a landslide.
He won in a landslide. Yeah. So this narrative did not exist except for 2016 when you had a progressive challenger to the centrist Democrat. So like I said, it's amazing that people didn't see that. It's amazing that they believe it was something that like had never happened before, a bitter contest. Yeah. But like you said, it's a 24-hour news cycle. People kind of lose track of what happened just a year prior, 2 years, the last election cycle. But all this stuff repeats itself.
They recycle these things all the time. Like Mike said, and one other example is how the Clinton campaign, they passed around the photo of Obama in Muslim clothing.
I know.
Yeah, and which is directly. I mean, that's just like the whole. Bernie's a Russian because he visited Russia once.
You know what I like. I like to say. When people talk about Obama's legacy, and kind of maintaining that, and I'm like, well, part of Obama's legacy was running against Hillary Clinton. So Bernie Sanders was just fulfilling that. If you want Obama's legacy, right? He ran against Hillary Clinton. And quite frankly, he was nicer to Hillary Clinton than Obama was. If you go back and look at like Obama's speeches, whether it be while he was on stage with Hillary Clinton or alone, this dude was like hitting her with all kinds of combos.
I know.
And I'm like, I'm amazed to this day that people think that Bernie Sanders was too rough on Hillary Clinton.
Remember Tone It Down?
Tone It Down. You remember Tone It Down?
David Brock telling Bernie Sanders, tone it down. You're being too rough on her. It's crazy. Really, we wanted Bernie Sanders to be much more aggressive. There were certain things that he could have said during the campaigns, said during debates that he didn't. He could have actually planted the corruption on top of Hillary Clinton's head, but he always kind of talked about it in like a general sense. He never really said, you are corrupt. The money that you are taking, that is corrupt. He never actually made that.
Yeah, he asked very fair questions. It's like, why don't you release the speeches to Wall Street?
Yeah.
Like, these are just basic questions.
Reasonable.
And people accuse him of being too harsh on Hillary for just asking incredibly basic, fair questions. So let's see. This has gone on a while. I've enjoyed it all. I could go on forever. I'm trying to think, how should we end this? Well, what do you guys think about what's going on right now and like the future of... So with the Bernie Sanders campaign and then the future of independent media, although we have touched on it already, but just give me some closing thoughts on that, or really whatever you like.
maybe it's just not time. I think maybe we have to accept that. Maybe it's just not time. We talked about this on the show last night, and we talked about maybe some weaknesses that Bernie Sanders has that kind of keeps him from not him, because it's not me, us, but keeps a platform like his on the back burner. I think Bernie Sanders has a personality type that's not like a shark, a go-getter. I'm not going to point fingers. I'm not going to call people out. I'm not going to be like, I said what I said. I tell it like it is. Kind of like a Nina Turner.
Right.
And he is actually too nice of a guy. He is actually too nice for a revolution. I do think that's ironic because everybody associates his political movement and his platform with a revolution, and it is. But I honestly don't think he has like that particular personality type to take it directly to the establishment and point fingers. He's always calling Biden, oh, my friend Joe Biden, or my friend Elizabeth Warren. So he always is trying to like imagine that these people can be moved, that there's some kind of good in them and I'm going to work with them. Honestly, I don't think I don't think we are going to be able to move forward with a nice guy. And I'm not saying he needs to become a Bernie bro, but we need somebody who is going to be like, yo, this dude right here is stealing money from you. this dude right here is like corrupt. This dude takes money from this company, and this him taking money from this company made him make this decision. Like
That's
this,
basically
like
that's what worked for Trump.
that.
He
Yeah,
he shredded apart the Republican opponents. He shredded them constantly, never let up.
I'm more pro Bernie than anybody. But if you like actually like in Bernie circles, and they talk about like what they wish Bernie would do, like
Yeah,
let's say it's always like, yo,
hit more,
don't
hit more fierce.
hit more. He's usually not going on offense. He's usually going on defense. He doesn't he doesn't want to seem like the mean guy, but unfortunately, like
they're going to portray him as the mean guy.
They're going to portray him as the mean guy anyway. Yeah. And like
that's the thing. That's a huge point. That's a very important point.
Like Will mentioned on the show last night. Like, who are we fighting here?
Exactly.
The establishment does not play nice.
No.
So, as much as I support Bernie Sanders, I think he plays too nice. He plays too nice. And the next progressive, we know Bernie Sanders is not running for president again. I don't know when there'll be somebody like him. And I don't think there's going to be somebody like him that has a long track record, but does have the mentality and the mindset. That next person, if centrist establishment Democrats and the people that support them, if they think that Bernie Sanders was too much, if they think that this iteration of progressives and leftists is too hard to deal with, wait till the next time. Wait till the next person comes up. They're going to have a much harder time, because if somebody like Bernie Sanders, who is actually a nice guy and tried to play politics nice, but tried to help working class people.
And they turn him and they make him out to be a freaking devil. Sexist, misogynist, racist, it's insane.
Couldn't get enough steam up to actually get people out to support him in a meaningful way, like in a substantive way, like everybody, not just, people who are progressives. But like if somebody like him couldn't do that, then there needs to be a kind of different manifestation of somebody like Bernie Sanders. So maybe that's just me, just like speaking towards.
That's your theory.
Yeah, that's not just my theory, but like I always have to even though I'm very optimistic, I still have to self-reflect on the movement and on the person that led the movement and figure out okay. I can't just be everything was 100% fine and it just didn't work. There's gotta be something different. There's gotta be kind of the side that I deal with that is more critical, so we can move forward.
Will, let me jump in on that quick, then we finish with you. But I think, one thing, the reason Bernie, you great points. But one thing is, the reason Bernie was always on the defensive is because of all these ridiculous attacks.
Yeah.
I think he'd be able to spend a lot more time pointing out the flaws and concerns with the other candidates if he didn't have to do with that. And he does point out these concerns. He is I think some of the criticism against him is a little unfair, because he is constantly talking about the issues and concerns. I guess that's the one of the reasons, or one of the strategies that just hasn't worked so well is, it's weird because just talking about the issues is what I like about Bernie Sanders. And I think that's what probably many, if not most, of his supporters like about him. Talking about the issues rather than the candidates and personal attacks. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you're running for a person, not just issues. Ultimately, it's a position that a person is supposed to hold. So,
yes, those issues are connected to a person.
Yeah. And honestly, I want a Bernie Sanders. I think a nice, empathetic, honest, sincere human that really does care about the issues and is going to put the issues ahead of everything else, or in particular ahead of petty personal attacks. I think that is an ideal leader. That's who we want. But like you said, and it scares me, it worries me, it concerns me that perhaps it sure seems like there's really no other option, that after seeing what has happened to Bernie Sanders over the last 8 years, that people are not going. They're going to stop playing nice, and it's, I don't know. It's just a scary, potentially scary thought. It's not an ideal situation, but it's like but what do you expect after the way the media's treated him? So yeah, that's my thoughts. Go ahead, Will.
I think it is going to get more testy, and it should. When we were talking about Bernie Bros, and a lot of people that talk about Bernie Bros and pushing back on just how ridiculous that narrative is, people are going to be aggressive when you see so many of us being attacked. Really, we're being attacked by power. Our lives are being attacked by the power apparatus in this country, and has been going on for so many years. So when we are struggling, when we are feeling like we are so attacked, but the power apparatus is calling for civility, we aren't going to hear that nonsense because it just doesn't come across right. We realize that you are standing in the way of us raising the standard of living in this country, of people actually being represented. So with Bernie Sanders going forward from him, the next progressive that may run for president, I would like to see somebody that is more aggressive in their approach. And not to say that I want to see more personal attacks, but the whole point of a campaign is to differentiate yourself with the other competitors. And so if one of those tools that you have, specifically right now in 2020, when you have that tool, especially when somebody like Biden is saying how strong of a Democrat he is, and the information about him going to Michigan and trying to get a Republican, a far right Republican, no less, reelected to Congress. When you know that, then you've got to put that on you can't leave that on the table. You have to use that tool because, like you were saying before, the fight is that fierce. This power apparatus, the establishment, they're not going to play nice. No matter what you do, no matter how many nice things you say, no matter how many times you say, well, Joe Biden is my friend and I believe he has a good heart and he's coming from a good place. No matter how many times you say that, they're going to be unfair in their approach in assessing what you are as a person or a candidate. So you can't, I guess you can't play into the idea that if I say too much or if I go too aggressive, then they're going to try to they're going to do it anyway.
Exactly.
So you might as well just tell the truth. You might as well be as aggressive as you can.
That's why I was upset that he kind of capitulated. He played into the Bernie bro thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because he did, just to be nice, he played into it. He's like, okay, my supporters don't be nice. And if you do that online, then they're not a part of my movement. Like he wanted to apologize for it. And I think he did that to play along. And I don't even think it would have mattered. I just don't think it would have mattered whether he.
That's a great point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great goddamn point. And I've learned this. This is something I've definitely learned through all this experience. Is that like you've both said, the media and the establishment, the opponents, they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn about like the truth. They don't give a damn about the truth, and they will use everything against you no matter what. So like you said, he apologized for it for the same tiny percentage, according to this Harvard. I mean, it's obvious to anyone with common sense, but it's also provable and has been proven recently, like that Harvard graduate student study that I cited. 1% to 2% of all candidates' Twitter stuff, of fans on Twitter, they spit harsh nastiness.
And that's just Twitter. That's just Twitter.
And that's all it's no different for Bernie supporters than others. And
that's just the human condition. That's
exactly.
Just
and
humans.
I can't believe Elizabeth Warren was saying that we have to all be we're all responsible for all our followers. Good Lord. I mean, you guys got like several thousand followers.
That can of worms, man.
Yeah, I got
those some thick ass earthworms.
Yeah. How the hell can we all no? People shouldn't be responsible for all their followers, but you can give them responsibility for leading by example.
Right.
And
you
Bernie
can.
Sanders leads by example. He
Exactly.
doesn't do that shit. He's not a nasty person. He's an incredibly kind,
Right.
person.
These are
And
free human beings
yeah,
on social media. We don't
yeah.
know who they really are, if it's a real profile, if it's a real picture. They are able to do whatever they want to. It's on Twitter to say if they have violated terms and conditions. But if they want to be mean, they can be mean. Bernie Sanders can do nothing about that whatsoever. But
Yeah.
he's being tasked. He's being called to task for it.
He's saying he what they say he allows it.
How can you?
If you're saying if you say somebody is allowing something, by default you are saying that they can do something about it.
And he can't.
And he can't. That
He
doesn't make
literally
sense. And quite frankly, they need to make up their minds, because I was told that most of Bernie Sanders supporters are Russian bots anyway. So which is it? Are Bernie Sanders supporters Russian bots, or are we a Bernie Bro brigade, a toxic Bernie Bro brigade being led by Bernie Sanders? He's the commander.
Everything they
So which
say
is it?
we
Is
are.
it
That's
bots,
in the
or
media
is it
where
real
everything
people?
they want to
So
tell.
is it Bernie
say
Bros
we are.
or is it bots? Like which is it?
Yeah.
Like how you want him to be responsible for what you call bots?
Yeah.
Like which is it? Is it Russian bots that support Bernie,
Come on,
or is
man.
it real people who are toxic?
This
And
is
you
what I
want-
mean.
Like which is it?
They will not play fair whatsoever.
Yep.
So you might as well not pay
They
attention.
used the apology against him, guys. Like you said, they used the apology against him. I'm currently in the process of putting like Bernie Bro media coverage together for a video, and literally they use it as evidence. They use his apology as evidence that there's this huge problem.
Meanwhile,
there's
Joe
no-
Biden gets into the argument with a union worker, and he's cursing at him.
Yep.
And they
Challenges it to a fight. I'm
Yeah.
gonna slap you in the face. or
and
something.
nobody says, oh, well, that's indicative of, all the Joe Biden supporters, and how dare Joe Biden. A lot of people were saying, oh, that shows some moxie.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got some fight to him. Really?
Toughness is so tough.
Guys,
But with
I-
Bernie Sanders, it's indicative of the Bernie bro culture.
Imagine if Bernie Sanders would have done that to a union worker, or said that
my
to a
gosh.
union worker. It would have been breaking news like 5 minutes later.
Of course it would. Of course it would. And
Yeah.
it would have been all negative.
Is this how Bernie Sanders encourages
Yep,
his toxic
for sure,
Bernie bros
for sure.
online?
Yeah. And there's all the, the whole Biden thing. I could go on that for a whole bit. I actually found myself on Super Tuesday, just by chance. I'm at a table at some restaurant, and this girl is arguing about how sexist Bernie Sanders is, and how his followers are all sexist. And literally, like, this is just one person at a table that's filled with girls who are all supporting Bernie Sanders, which is
Really?
Yeah. So and yet she's still like pushing this, and her big evidence was, well, one, she couldn't think of a single specific example, which is great, but again, it doesn't get through. But I hoped, me and everyone, like, we just asked her like calmly questions, like, I mean, is there any example? And the fact that she couldn't come to one, we would hope, I would hope that eventually, she gets some like realization, like eventually that seeps in. Like, you have no examples of this. Oh, there's an example of like one supporter. It's like, how is that connected?
That's not evidence.
Yeah,
that's not evidence.
That's an anecdote.
Yeah.
And then she just like the media personality, she used the fact that he apologized. She goes, but he apologized. It was so bad, he apologized for it. That's it's like, and then honestly, I said, I tried to say, well, he didn't have to apologize. And then and all of a sudden I was a sexist because of that.
Of course you were.
I mean,
By
he
extension,
apologized
you
because he's
must
a
be
nice
sexist.
guy, and he really does, and he doesn't approve of that stuff, of course. But obviously, it's not his responsibility. But anyway, they use it as evidence, which is absurd, and like it's anyway. So yeah, guys. So what we've learned is that unfortunately, being the nice guy does not always work. Apologies. These people, your enemies, are gonna use everything against you no matter what. They're gonna attack you no matter what. So just keep that in mind. Don't apologize when you're not wrong. Unfortunately, I mean, a lot of people, I know I've made this mistake, and it's just, these people are out to get you no matter what. Don't bow down, and listen to Let the Madness Begin and other independent media. Thank you, Mike and Will. This has been a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, man, we gotta do this again, man.
Cool.
Yeah, man. We appreciate you having us on, man,
Yeah,
and
sure.
Continue the good work, man.
Yeah, man, your
those
videos,
man.
Like,
we love them.
A+, man.
No doubt.
You got a knack for like putting stuff like that together, man.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Thanks.
You got a gift, bro.
All right, let's keep it up. We'll try to keep it up. All right, peace, guys.
All right, man.